The slamming of the front door jolts me from my thoughts. Ethan storms into the living room, his face contorted with anger. "Where the hell have you been?" he demands, his voice dripping with accusation. "I was volunteering at the youth center," I reply calmly, trying to defuse the situation. "You know how much it means to me." "Oh, spare me the sob story, Vivian," Ethan scoffs. "You're supposed to be here, supporting me and my career. Instead, you're off playing saint to a bunch of delinquents." His words sting, but I refuse to let him see how much they hurt. "They're not delinquents, Ethan. They're kids who need guidance and support." "What they need is discipline and a swift kick in the ass," he retorts. "And what I need is a wife who understands her role." I feel my blood boil at his condescending tone. "My role? And what exactly is that, Ethan? To be your trophy wife? To sit at home and wait for you to grace me with your presence?" "Don't be so dramatic," he sneers. "You knew what you were getting into when you married me. I'm on the fast track to partner, and I need a wife who can keep up appearances." "Appearances?" I echo, disbelief coloring my voice. "Is that all our marriage is to you? A facade to impress your colleagues?" Ethan steps closer, his eyes narrowing. "Watch your tone, Vivian. Remember who pays the bills around here." The threat hangs heavy in the air, and I feel a chill run down my spine. Are you seriously going to hold that over my head? I gave up my job to move here for you, Ethan. I've sacrificed everything for this marriage. Sacrificed? He laughs humorlessly. You call sitting around all day, spending my money a sacrifice? You should be grateful for the life I've given you. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I am grateful, Ethan, but I'm also suffocating. I feel like I'm losing myself in this marriage. Then maybe you should find yourself a new hobby, he suggests coldly. One that doesn't involve neglecting your duties as my wife. And what about your duties as my husband? I counter, my voice rising. When was the last time you even asked about my day? Or showed any interest in my life? Ethan's jaw clenches, and for a moment I think he might actually hear me. But then he shakes his head, his expression hardening. I don't have time for this, Vivian. I have a career to focus on. If you can't handle that, then maybe we need to reevaluate this marriage. With that, he turns on his heel and stalks out of the room, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. I sink onto the couch, my mind reeling. How did we get here? How did the man I fell in love with turn into this cold, calculating stranger? I think back to the early days of our relationship, when Ethan was attentive and loving. We met at a charity event, both passionate about making a difference in the world. He swept me off my feet with his charm and ambition, and within a year we were married. But somewhere along the way, his career took precedence over everything else. And now, I'm left wondering if there's anything left of the marriage I thought we had. 2 years into our marriage, Ethan comes home with a bombshell announcement. I've been offered a partnership at a law firm in Los Angeles, he declares, a triumphant grin on his face. I stare at him, my heart sinking. Los Angeles? But what about my job, Ethan? My students? Come on, Vivian, he cajoles. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. You can always find another teaching job in L.A. It's not that simple, I argue, my voice strained. I've built a life here, Ethan. I have roots in this community. Ethan's smile fades, replaced by a look of annoyance. I thought you'd be happy for me, Vivian. This is a huge step up for us. For you, maybe, I counter. But what about what I want? What about my dreams? Dreams? He scoffs. You're a high school teacher, Vivian. How far do you think that's going to take you? His words cut deep, and I feel my eyes sting with tears. I can't believe you just said that. Teaching is my passion, Ethan. It's not just a job to me. Ethan sighs, running a hand through his hair. Look, I didn't mean it like that, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Vivian. We can't pass it up. I know he's right, but the thought of leaving everything behind feels like a knife twisting in my gut. Fine, I relent, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll take a sabbatical from teaching. Ethan's face lights up, and he pulls me into a hug. You won't regret this, Vivian. I promise. But as we pack up our life and prepare for the move, I can't shake the feeling that I'm making a terrible mistake. The day of the move arrives, and I find myself surrounded by boxes, my childhood home stripped bare. As I carefully wrap a framed photo of my parents, Ethan walks in, a look of disdain on his face. "You're not seriously bringing that old junk, are you?" he asks, eyeing the sentimental items I've carefully packed. "They're not junk, Ethan," I defend, my voice tight. "They're memories, pieces of my history." "We're starting a new life, Vivian," he reminds me, his tone condescending. "We don't need to drag the past along with us." I bite my tongue, not wanting to argue. But as I watch Ethan carelessly toss my treasured possessions aside, I feel a piece of myself crumble. We arrive in Los Angeles, and Ethan ushers me into our new home, a sleek, modern, high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Isn't it perfect?" he gushes, his eyes alight with excitement. I force a smile, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. "It's lovely, Ethan." He wraps an arm around my waist, pulling me close. "This is just the beginning, Vivian. I'm going to give you the life you've always dreamed of." But as I stare out at the unfamiliar skyline, I can't help but wonder if the life I've always dreamed of is the one I'm leaving behind. 6 months pass in a blur of cocktail parties and corporate dinners, Ethan's new role consuming his every waking moment. I find solace in volunteering at a local youth center, pouring my heart into mentoring troubled teens. But one evening, as I'm getting ready for a fundraiser, Ethan barges into the bedroom, his face twisted with rage. "Are you seriously wearing that?" he demands, eyeing my simple black dress with disdain. "What's wrong with it?" I ask, my voice trembling slightly. "You look like a damn schoolmarm," he sneers. "I need you to look the part of a successful lawyer's wife, not some frumpy volunteer." Tears sting my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to let him see how much his words hurt. "I'll change," I mumble, turning away. But as I slip into a designer gown and plaster on a fake smile, I can't shake the feeling that I'm slowly losing myself, piece by piece. 6 months into our new life in Los Angeles, Ethan's behavior takes a turn for the worse. He becomes increasingly distant and irritable, the stress of his demanding job taking a toll on our already strained relationship. I find solace in volunteering at the youth center, pouring my heart into mentoring the kids who have come to rely on me. But one evening, as I'm preparing to leave for a fundraising event, Ethan storms into the room, his face contorted with anger. "Where do you think you're going?" he demands, his voice dripping with disdain. "To the youth center fundraiser," I reply, my heart sinking at the sight of his rage. "I told you about it weeks ago. And I told you to prioritize our social obligations," he snaps. "You're supposed to be at the law firm dinner with me tonight." "I can't just abandon the kids, Ethan," I plead. "They're counting on me." "I'm counting on you," he roars, slamming his hand against the wall. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to have a wife who'd rather spend her time with a bunch of delinquents than support her husband's career?" Tears sting my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. "They're not delinquents, Ethan. They're good kids who just need someone to believe in them." "Believe in them?" he scoffs. "They're a lost cause, Vivian. Just like you'll be if you don't start prioritizing what's important." His words cut deep, but I stand my ground. I am prioritizing what's important, Ethan. Those kids need me. "And what about what I need?" he demands, his voice low and menacing. "What about the sacrifices I've made for this family?" "Sacrifices?" I echo, disbelief coloring my tone. "You've been so focused on your career that you've barely even noticed me these past few months." "Oh, I've noticed," he sneers. "I've noticed how you've let yourself go, how you'd rather wallow in self-pity than be the wife I need you to be." I reel back as if he slapped me, my heart shattering into a million pieces. "How can you say that?" I whisper, my voice trembling. "I've given up everything for you, Ethan. My job, my home, my entire life." "And now you'll give up this ridiculous volunteering," he demands, "or I'll cut off your access to our joint bank account." I stare at him in shock, unable to believe what I'm hearing. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," he says, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "I'm done indulging your little charity projects, Vivian. It's time for you to fall in line." With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, leaving me to collapse onto the bed, my body shaking with silent sobs. I feel trapped, suffocated by the weight of Ethan's expectations and the life I've found myself in. Over the next few weeks, I try to be the wife Ethan wants me to be. I attend his work functions, plastering on a fake smile and pretending to be the perfect corporate spouse. But inside, I'm dying a little more each day. I long for the fulfillment I once found in teaching, for the sense of purpose that volunteering at the youth center brought me. But every time I try to broach the subject with Ethan, he shuts me down, reminding me of my place in his life. One night, as we're getting ready for yet another work dinner, I finally muster up the courage to confront him. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," I say, my voice shaking. "I'm miserable. I feel like I'm losing myself." He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "You're not losing yourself, Vivian. You're finding your place in this world, and that place is by my side, supporting my career." "But what about my career?" I plead. "What about my dreams?" "Dreams," he scoffs. "Grow up, Vivian. It's time to face reality. This is your life now, and the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll both be." I feel something break inside of me, the last shred of hope I'd been clinging to shattering into dust. And as I follow Ethan out the door, my heart heavy with despair, I can't help but wonder if I'll ever find my way back to the person I used to be. As the months drag on, the distance between Ethan and I grows wider with each passing day. I long for the connection we once shared, for the love that brought us together in the first place. And so one evening, I muster up the courage to broach the subject that's been weighing on my heart. "Ethan," I say softly, my voice trembling, "I've been thinking about starting a family." He looks up from his laptop, his eyes narrowing. "A family? Now? Are you out of your mind, Vivian?" His harsh tone catches me off guard, and I feel my heart sink. "I just thought, with your career taking off and us settling into our new life here." "Settling into our new life," he scoffs. "I'm barely keeping my head above water at work, and you want to add a baby to the mix?" "But I thought you wanted children," I whisper, my voice barely audible. "Maybe someday," he says dismissively, "but not now, Vivian. I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility." His words cut deep, and I feel a piece of my dream for our future crumble. But I refuse to let him see how much he's hurt me. Instead, I force a smile and nod. "Of course. You're right. It was a silly idea." Ethan returns to his work, and I'm left alone with my thoughts, my heart heavy with the weight of his rejection. In an attempt to find some semblance of purpose, I take a part-time job at a bookstore. At first, Ethan seems supportive, even happy that I'm getting out of the house. But as the weeks pass, his attitude begins to change. "I don't like you spending so much time away from home," he grumbles one evening as I'm getting ready for my shift. "It's just a few hours a week, Ethan," I remind him gently. "And I thought you wanted me to find something to keep me busy." "I wanted you to find a hobby, not a job," he retorts. "What's next? You'll be neglecting your duties at home to pursue some silly career?" I bristle at his words, my temper flaring. "My duties at home? You mean waiting on you hand and foot, catering to your every whim?" "Watch your tone, Vivian," he warns, his eyes flashing with anger. I take a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I'm sorry, Ethan, I didn't mean to snap. I need something for myself, something that makes me feel valued." For a moment, his expression softens, and I think he might actually understand, but then he shakes his head, his jaw clenching. "Fine. Do what you want, but don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." I leave for my shift with a heavy heart, wondering if I'll ever be able to find happiness in this new life we've built. A few days later, on a whim, Ethan and I buy lottery tickets. As we sit at the kitchen table, scratching off the numbers, I can't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be our lucky break. But as the weeks pass and the drawing comes and goes, our tickets prove to be just another disappointment. Ethan barely seems to notice, too caught up in his own world to care about my foolish dreams. And then, just when I think things can't get any worse, Ethan comes home with news that turns my world upside down. "I got a promotion," he announces, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. For a moment, I allow myself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe this will be the thing that finally brings us back together, that reignites the spark we once shared. But as the days turn into weeks, Ethan's behavior only worsens. He becomes more demanding, more critical of my every move. Nothing I do seems to be good enough, and I find myself walking on eggshells, desperate to avoid his wrath. Late one night, as I lie awake in bed, listening to Ethan's steady breathing beside me, I can't help but wonder how we got here, how the man I once loved could have turned into such a monster. And as I stare up at the ceiling, my heart heavy with the weight of my own misery, I know one thing for certain. Something has to change. I can't keep living like this. I just don't know how much more I can take. Ethan's promotion seems to have only fueled his ego, and his treatment of me reaches new lows. One evening, he comes home late from work, reeking of alcohol and expensive perfume. "Where have you been?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "Out with clients," he slurs, stumbling into the living room. "Not that it's any of your business." I feel a flare of anger at his dismissive tone. "It is my business, Ethan. I'm your wife." He laughs, a cruel, mocking sound. "Wife? Please. You're nothing but a burden, Vivian, a millstone around my neck." His words hit me like a physical blow, and I reel back, my eyes stinging with tears. "How can you say that? After everything I've done for you, for our marriage." "What have you done exactly?" he sneers. "Quit your job, abandoned your friends, moved across the country for me? You should be thanking me for giving you a purpose in life." I shake my head in disbelief, unable to comprehend the venom in his voice. "A purpose? You've taken everything from me, Ethan. My career, my dreams, my sense of self-worth." "Oh, spare me the pity party," he scoffs. "You're just jealous of my success. Jealous that I've made something of myself while you've been content to sit at home and play the martyr." "Jealous?" I echo, my voice rising. "I'm not jealous of your success, Ethan. I'm disgusted by what it's turned you into." He takes a step towards me, his eyes flashing with anger. "Watch yourself, Vivian. You don't want to push me too far." But I'm too far gone to heed his warning. "Or what? You'll leave me? Go ahead. I'd rather be alone than spend another minute with a man who treats me like dirt." For a moment he looks stunned, as if he can't believe I've dared to stand up to him. But then his face twists into a sneer, and he leans in close, his breath hot against my cheek. "You're nothing without me, Vivian. Nothing. And if you even think about leaving, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life." With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, leaving me trembling in his wake. I sink onto the couch, my head in my hands, and let the tears come. How did I let things get this bad? How did I let myself become so weak, so dependent on a man who clearly doesn't love me? As I sit there, lost in my own misery, my phone buzzes with an incoming text. I glance at the screen, expecting to see a message from Ethan, but instead, I find myself staring at a name I don't recognize. Natalie. My heart stops. Who is Natalie? And why is she texting my husband at this hour of the night? With shaking hands, I open the message, my eyes widening as I read the words on the screen. "I had a great time tonight, Ethan. Can't wait to see you again soon. XOXO." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Ethan is cheating on me. The late nights, the distant behavior, the cruel words. It all makes sense now. I confront him the moment he walks through the door, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "Who is Natalie, Ethan? And don't you dare lie to me." He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "She's a colleague, a friend. Not that it's any of your business." "A friend," I echo, my voice rising. "Since when do friends send flirty texts in the middle of the night?" His face hardens, and he takes a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. "You went through my phone. How dare you?" "How dare I?" I shout, my temper flaring. "How dare you cheat on me, Ethan? How dare you treat me like garbage while you're off screwing some other woman?" "I want a divorce," he says flatly, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm done with this marriage, Vivian. Done with you." His words hit me like a physical blow, and I stumble back, my vision blurring with tears. But even through the pain, I feel a flicker of something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. And as I stand there, watching the man I once loved walk away from me, I make a vow to myself. I will make him pay for what he's done. I will make him suffer the way he's made me suffer. And I know just how to do it. Ethan's betrayal cuts deep, but I refuse to let him see how much he's hurt me. Instead, I channel my pain into planning my revenge. And the first step is to gather evidence of his infidelity. I hire a private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Maria who assures me she'll get the proof I need. And sure enough, within a week, she presents me with a stack of photos and recordings that leave no doubt about Ethan's affair. I confront him with the evidence, my heart pounding in my chest as I watch the color drain from his face. "How could you do this to me, Ethan?" I ask, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "How could you throw away everything we had for some cheap fling?" He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. Don't be so dramatic, Vivian. It was just sex. It didn't mean anything. His callousness takes my breath away, and I feel a wave of nausea wash over me. Just sex? Is that all our marriage was to you? Just a convenient arrangement until something better came along? He shrugs, his lips curling into a cruel smirk. What can I say? I got bored. And Natalie, well, she knows how to keep things interesting. I shake my head in disbelief, unable to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. You disgust me, Ethan. You're nothing but a selfish, manipulative bastard. And you're a pathetic, clingy little girl who can't accept that her husband has outgrown her, he sneers. Face it, Vivian, you were never enough for me. You never will be. His words hit me like a physical blow, and I reel back, my eyes stinging with tears. But I refuse to let him see me cry. Not anymore. Get out, I whisper, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of my house and out of my life. I never want to see you again. He laughs, a harsh, mocking sound that echoes through the room. Gladly. But don't think you're going to get a dime from me in the divorce. I'll make sure you end up with nothing, Vivian. Nothing. With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, my body shaking with silent sobs as the reality of what's just happened washes over me. But even through the pain, I feel a flicker of something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Because I know something Ethan doesn't. Something that will change everything. I've won the lottery. 2 weeks ago, on a whim, I bought a ticket for the Powerball jackpot, and against all odds, I hit the jackpot. $10 million, all mine. I've kept the news to myself, not wanting to give Ethan any reason to suspect that I might be planning something. But now, as I sit on the floor of our once-shared home, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make Ethan pay for what he's done. I'm going to hit him where it hurts the most, his wallet. I hire the best divorce attorney in town, a shark named Jack, who assures me he'll make sure I get everything I'm entitled to. And with the evidence of Ethan's infidelity on my side, he tells me I have a strong case for a generous settlement. But I don't want Ethan's money. I want to make him suffer. I want to watch him squirm as he realizes just how much he's underestimated me. And so, on the day of our divorce hearing, I walk into the courtroom with my head held high, my lottery ticket tucked safely in my purse. I watch as Ethan smirks at me from across the room, confident that he's going to walk away with everything. But then I take the stand, and I tell the judge everything. I tell him about Ethan's affair, about his cruel treatment of me throughout our marriage. And then, with a triumphant smile, I pull out my lottery ticket and hold it up for the world to see. I don't want a dime from this man, Your Honor, I say, my voice ringing out clear and strong. I have all the money I need, and then some. All I want is my freedom, and the satisfaction of knowing that Ethan will never be able to hurt me again. The look on Ethan's face as the judge grants me a divorce and orders him to pay my legal fees is one I'll never forget. And as I walk out of the courtroom, my head held high and my heart finally free, I know that I've won. Not just the lottery, but my life back. And that's a prize worth more than all the money in the world. With the divorce finalized and my lottery winnings secure, I feel a sense of freedom I haven't known in years. But even as I revel in my newfound independence, I can't shake the desire to make Ethan pay for what he's done. And so I set my plan into motion. I know that Ethan's law firm handles high-profile clients, including several major banks in the city. And I also know that he's been angling for a promotion to senior partner, a position that would put him in charge of managing those accounts. So I decide to hit him where it hurts. His reputation. I make an appointment at Ethan's bank, the same one he's been schmoozing with for months in the hopes of landing their business. And when I walk in, dressed to the nines and carrying a briefcase full of cash, I make sure everyone knows exactly who I am. I'd like to make a deposit, I say, my voice ringing out loud and clear across the lobby. $10 million, to be exact. The teller's eyes widen, and I can see the wheels turning in her head as she tries to figure out who I am and where I got such a large sum of money. Of course, ma'am, she stammers, ushering me into a private room. We'll just need to verify the funds and fill out some paperwork. I smile, settling into a chair and crossing my legs. Take your time. I've got all day. As the teller scurries off to get her manager, I lean back and savor the moment. I can only imagine the look on Ethan's face when he finds out that his ex-wife, the woman he thought he'd broken, is now one of the bank's most valued clients. And sure enough, within minutes, the bank manager is falling all over himself to accommodate me. He offers me everything from a personal financial advisor to a VIP lounge pass, all the while assuring me that my money is in good hands. I just smile and nod, playing the part of the gracious client. But inside, I'm counting down the seconds until Ethan walks through that door. And when he finally does, his face a mask of shock and anger, I know I've won. "Vivian," he hisses, his eyes darting around the room as if he's afraid someone might overhear. "What the hell are you doing here?" I smile, my voice sweet as honey. "Just making a little deposit, darling. I thought you'd be happy to see me supporting your bank." His face turns red, and I can see the veins in his neck bulging with barely contained rage. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Trying to humiliate me in front of my clients?" I shrug, my eyes wide with feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Ethan. I'm just a satisfied customer, here to do business with the best bank in town." He takes a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. "You little bitch, you think you're so clever, don't you? Well, let me tell you something. You may have won the lottery, but you're still nothing, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." But before he can say another word, the bank manager clears his throat, his voice nervous but firm. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We don't tolerate that kind of language or behavior towards our clients." Ethan's face goes white, and I can see the panic in his eyes as he realizes the gravity of the situation. He's just insulted and threatened a high-value client in front of his boss, and there's no way he's going to come out of this unscathed. I apologize," he stammers, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean—" But it's too late, the damage is done, and as he's escorted out of the room by security, his head hanging in shame, I feel a rush of triumph that's almost intoxicating. I've hit Ethan where it hurts the most, his ego, and I know that this is just the beginning. He may have taken everything from me, but now I'm the one holding all the cards, and I'm going to make damn sure he never forgets it. News of Ethan's outburst at the bank spreads like wildfire, and within days he's facing disciplinary action from his firm. His clients start to pull their accounts, and his once promising career begins to crumble before his eyes. I watch from afar, savoring every moment of his downfall. But even as I revel in my revenge, I can't help but feel a twinge of something else, something that feels suspiciously like regret. And then one day I receive a phone call that changes everything. "Vivian?" Ethan's voice is weak, broken. "I need to see you, please." I hesitate, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wants to hang up, to leave him to wallow in his own misery. But another part of me, the part that once loved him, can't resist the plea in his voice. "Fine," I say, my voice cold. "But make it quick." We meet at a coffee shop near my old apartment, a place we used to frequent in happier times. Ethan looks like a shell of his former self, his eyes bloodshot and his skin pale. "I'm sorry," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, "for everything. I know I can't take back what I did, but I need you to know that I'm truly deeply sorry." I stare at him, my heart twisting in my chest. I want to believe him, to forgive him, but I can't. Not after everything he's put me through. "It's too late, Ethan," I say, my voice trembling. "You had your chance, and you blew it. I'm done being your punching bag." He nods, his eyes filling with tears. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I'm going to get help. I'm going to be a better man, even if it's too late for us." I feel a lump rising in my throat, and I swallow hard. "I hope you do, Ethan, for your sake and for the sake of anyone else who might cross your path." He looks at me, his eyes searching mine. "What about you, Vivian? What are you going to do now?" I take a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. And then, suddenly, I know exactly what I want to do. "I'm going to start a foundation," I say, my voice growing stronger with each word. "A foundation that helps women like me, women who have been beaten down and broken by men like you. I'm going to use my money to make a difference, to help others find their strength and their voice." Ethan stares at me, his eyes wide with surprise. That's amazing, Vivian. I'm proud of you." I nod, my heart swelling with pride. I'm proud of me too, Ethan, and I'm done letting you or anyone else dictate my worth. We part ways soon after, and as I walk out of the coffee shop, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. I know that I'll never forget what Ethan did to me, but I also know that I'm stronger because of it. And as I set to work on my foundation, pouring my heart and soul into helping other women find their power, I realize that this is what I was meant to do all along. I may have started out as a victim, but now I'm a survivor, and I'm going to make damn sure that no one ever forgets it. Months turn into years, and as my foundation grows and thrives, I find myself back in my hometown, teaching at the same high school where I started my career. I'm happy now, truly happy. I've found my purpose, my calling, and I know that everything I went through, every moment of pain and heartbreak was worth it to get me to where I am today. I may not have the perfect life, but I have a life that's all my own. And that's more than enough for me. As I stand in front of my classroom looking out at the eager faces of my students, I can't help but smile. I know that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do, and no one, not even Ethan, can take that away from me. Again? They were just here last month. My voice trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief as I confronted Martin, my husband of 3 years. Martin, with his typical dismissive wave, dropped his briefcase by the door. Evelyn, they're my parents. They want to see Lily, and it's only for a couple of weeks. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about his parents visiting. It was about respect, or the lack thereof. Martin had a habit of making decisions without consulting me, treating me more like a tenant than his wife. Evelyn, you're overreacting, Martin said, his tone laced with condescension as he walked past me. Just make sure the guest room is ready. I stood there, frozen, as he dismissed my feelings with such ease. It was always the same pattern. His parents, Miriam and Gerald, would arrive, turning our home upside down, leaving me to cater to their every whim, while Martin buried himself in work, conveniently absent. As I prepared the guest room, my mind raced with resentment. I thought back to the days before we were married, when Martin was considerate and kind. But since Lily's birth and our move to the suburbs, he had become increasingly domineering and detached. The next morning, I heard the familiar rumble of Miriam and Gerald's car in the driveway. I plastered a smile on my face as I opened the door. Good morning, Miriam. Geraldcom? Ah, there she is, our lovely daughter-in-law, Miriam exclaimed, brushing past me to fuss over Lily, who clung to my leg, eyeing her grandparents warily. Gerald followed, carrying their bags. We're so happy to be here. Where should we put these? Just in the guest room, thank you, I replied, my smile straining. The first few days passed in a blur of cooking, cleaning, and forced pleasantries. Martin came home late each night, barely acknowledging me or his parents. I felt invisible in my own home. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Gerald called out from the living room. Evelyn, where's the remote? The news is about to start. It's right there on the coffee table, Gerald, I replied, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Miriam chimed in. Evelyn, dear, could you bring us some tea? Gerald loves your tea. Suppressing a sigh, I nodded and headed to the kitchen. As the water boiled, I could hear them laughing and chatting in the living room, a stark contrast to the silence that filled the rest of the house. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found myself sitting in the dark kitchen, a cup of untouched tea in my hands. Tears streamed down my face as I realized how lonely and unappreciated I felt. I missed the partnership I thought I had with Martin, the love that seemed to have evaporated since Lily's arrival. I wiped away my tears, a resolve building within me. I couldn't continue living like this, invisible and unheard. I needed to find a way to make Martin see me, to acknowledge my feelings. But deep down, I feared that the man I had married was gone, replaced by this cold, indifferent stranger. As I headed to bed, I made a silent vow to myself. I wouldn't let this go on any longer. I had to find my voice again, for my sake and for Lily's. The days turned into a monotonous blur with Miriam and Gerald's presence in the house. Their demands grew each day, yet Martin remained oblivious to the mounting pressure on me. I felt like a puppet, dancing to their every whim, my own needs and desires shoved aside. One particularly grueling evening, as I cleared the dinner plates while everyone else lounged in the living room, Martin's voice sliced through the air. Evelyn, did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning? I paused, the weight of the plates heavy in my hands. No, Martin, I couldn't. I had to take Lily to her doctor's appointment today. A huff of annoyance came from him. You could have gone after that. I needed that suit for tomorrow. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Miriam and Gerald exchanged glances, an unspoken judgment passing between them. I felt a surge of anger, but I bit back my retort. This wasn't the time. The next morning, I found Martin in the kitchen, his demeanor icy. We need to talk about your attitude, Evelyn, he began, his tone patronizing. My attitude? I echoed, incredulity lacing my voice. Yes, you're not being accommodating enough to my parents. They've noticed it too. It's embarrassing, he said, fixing me with a cold stare. I felt a rush of frustration. Martin, I'm doing everything I can. I'm taking care of Lily, the house, your parents. He cut me off with a wave of his hand. That's what you're supposed to do. You're the woman of the house. My parents shouldn't feel unwelcome. His words stung, a stark reminder of how little he valued my efforts. I wanted to scream, to make him see how unfair this was, but I knew it would only fall on deaf ears. As the days passed, my resolve hardened. I couldn't let Martin and his parents treat me like this any longer. I began to plan, to think of ways to stand up for myself, to reclaim my dignity. The opportunity came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while Martin was at work and Miriam and Gerald were napping, I received a phone call from my old friend Laura. Evelyn, how have you been? I feel like it's been ages since we last talked. Laura's voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. Laura, it's so good to hear your voice, I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. We talked about everything and nothing, and for a brief moment I felt like my old self again. Then Laura's tone shifted. Evelyn, there's something I need to tell you. It's about Martin. My heart skipped a beat. What about him? I saw him the other day with someone. A woman. They seemed close, more than just colleagues. The room spun around me as Laura's words sank in. A sickening feeling settled in my stomach. Could Martin be having an affair? I'm sorry, Evelyn. I thought you should know, Laura added softly. The call ended, but her words echoed in my mind. The pieces began to fall into place, the late nights, the detached behavior, the lack of intimacy. I was faced with a harsh truth. My marriage was a sham, and I had been living in a fool's paradise. But I wasn't going to be the victim any longer. I would confront Martin, demand the truth, and if he was indeed betraying me, I would make him pay for every tear, every moment of pain he had caused me. That night, I lay in bed, my mind racing with plans of confrontation and revenge. I would no longer be the silent, suffering wife. It was time for Martin to see the strength he had underestimated in me. The days following Laura's revelation were a tempest of emotions. I observed Martin with a new lens, each of his dismissive remarks and arrogant gestures fueling my growing resentment. The man I once loved had become a stranger, his facade now transparent to my scrutinizing eyes. One evening, as I prepared Lily's dinner, Martin sauntered into the kitchen. Evelyn, my parents are thinking of extending their stay. You don't mind, do you? His question, so casually delivered, was a clear testament to his disregard for my feelings. Extend their stay? I repeated, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Martin, don't you think they've stayed long enough? Martin's face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? They're my parents. You should be more welcoming. I turned to face him, my frustration reaching its boiling point. Welcoming? Martin, I've been nothing but accommodating. But this is our home, too. I have a say in this. He scoffed. Your say? Look, Evelyn, you're the wife. It's your duty to take care of the household. My parents staying here shouldn't be an issue. His words struck a nerve. Duty? Is that all I am to you? A caretaker? Martin's eyes narrowed. Don't start with this nonsense, Evelyn. You're being irrational. Irrational? I could feel my voice rising, the pent-up anger and hurt pouring out. I'm the one being irrational? What about your late nights, your secret rendezvous? Are those rational? For a moment, Martin seemed taken aback, but he quickly regained his composure. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Martin. I know about the other woman. Laura saw you. His face went pale, then flushed with anger. You're spying on me now? How dare you? I'm not spying. I'm opening my eyes to the truth. The truth you've been hiding from me, I shot back, my resolve strengthening. Martin took a step closer, his voice low and menacing. Listen, Evelyn, you better watch your tone. You have no idea what you're talking about. But I wasn't intimidated. No, Martin, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I won't stand for this any longer. He scoffed, turning to leave the kitchen. Do what you want, just make sure my parents are comfortable. That night, after Martin had retreated to his den and Miriam and Gerald had retired to their room, I sat alone in the living room. The house was silent, but my mind was a cacophony of thoughts. I realized then that my marriage was beyond salvaging. Martin had not only betrayed me, but had also devalued me, treating me as nothing more than a servant in my own home. It was time for me to take a stand, to reclaim my life. I would no longer be a victim of Martin's arrogance and infidelity. I would gather evidence of his affair, consult a lawyer, and prepare for a divorce. But it wouldn't end there. Martin would have to face the consequences of his actions. I would ensure that he paid for the pain he had caused me, both emotionally and legally. As I lay in bed that night, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan not just for my escape, but for my retribution. Martin and his parents would soon learn that I was not a woman to be trifled with. The following days were a careful dance of deception and planning. I maintained a semblance of normalcy, all the while gathering evidence of Martin's infidelity. Laura had been right. A few discreet inquiries revealed Martin's secret meetings with a woman named Rachel, a colleague from his office. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table with his parents, Martin announced, I might need to go on a business trip next weekend. A business trip? The perfect alibi for his affair. I looked at him, my expression neutral, but inside, a storm was brewing. That sounds important, Martin. I hope it goes well, I said, my voice laced with hidden irony. Miriam chimed in, oblivious to the undercurrents. Oh, Martin works so hard. Evelyn, you should be proud of such a diligent husband. I forced a smile, my resolve hardening. Yes, I'm very proud. The next day, while Martin was at work and his parents were out shopping, I met with a lawyer. I laid out everything, the infidelity, the emotional neglect, the way Martin and his parents treated me. The lawyer listened intently, offering advice and outlining the next steps. You have a strong case, Evelyn, especially with the evidence of the affair, he said, his tone professional yet sympathetic. I nodded, a sense of empowerment growing within me. Thank you. I want to proceed with this as soon as possible. That night, I lay in bed, the plan crystallizing in my mind. I would confront Martin, but not yet. First, I would ensure everything was in place for the divorce. I wanted him to feel the full impact of his actions, to realize he couldn't just discard me like an old piece of furniture. The day of reckoning came sooner than expected. On Friday, as Martin prepared for his supposed business trip, I found the proof I needed, a receipt for a romantic getaway at a luxury resort, tucked carelessly in his coat pocket. That evening, with Martin's parents in the living room and Lily asleep, I confronted him. Going on a business trip, Martin, or should I say a romantic getaway with Rachel? Martin froze, the color draining from his face. Evelyn, how did you? I waved the receipt in front of him. You're not as clever as you think, Martin. I know everything. For a moment he seemed lost for words. Then his expression hardened. You've been snooping around, haven't you? You're pathetic. Pathetic? The word echoed in my mind, fueling my anger. No, Martin. What's pathetic is you sneaking around, betraying your family. But I'm done playing the dutiful wife. I'm filing for divorce. Martin's eyes widened in shock. Divorce? You can't do that. You're nothing without me. I met his gaze, my voice steady. No, Martin, it's you who will be nothing without me. I have evidence of your affair. I'll make sure you pay for what you've done. For a moment, he looked defeated, but then his arrogance returned. You think you can win against me? I'll fight you every step of the way, I smiled, a cold, determined smile. Bring it on, Martin. You'll see just how strong I can be. As I left the room, Martin's stunned silence was a victory in itself. But this was just the beginning. The real battle was about to start. The days following my confrontation with Martin were a whirlwind of legal preparations and silent battles. Martin's demeanor had shifted. He oscillated between anger and a feigned indifference, but I could see the underlying panic in his eyes. The weekend arrived, and with it, an unexpected development. Martin's parents decided to extend their stay, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly calm household. One afternoon, as I was tending to Lily in the living room, Martin and his parents cornered me. Evelyn, we need to talk about your behavior, Martin began, his voice dripping with disdain. Miriam nodded in agreement. Yes, dear. We've noticed you've been quite distant and cold. It's not becoming of a wife and mother. Gerald added, Martin has been nothing but a good husband. You should appreciate him more. Their words were like daggers, but I stood my ground. Appreciate him? For what exactly? For his lies? His affair? Martin's face turned red with anger. Don't bring that up in front of my parents. Why not, Martin? They should know the kind of son they've raised, I shot back, my voice firm. Miriam gasped. An affair? Martin, is this true? Before Martin could respond, I continued, Yes, it's true, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I've filed for divorce. The room fell into a stunned silence. Martin looked at me, his eyes full of malice. You'll regret this, Evelyn. You're nothing without me. I met his gaze, unwavering. No, Martin, I regret the years I spent tolerating your arrogance and disrespect. I'm taking Lily and I'm leaving. Martin's parents started to protest, but I didn't let them. This is between Martin and me. You've overstayed your welcome. It's time for you to leave. As I packed my bags, I could hear the muffled arguments in the background, Martin trying to explain himself to his incredulous parents. I felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing that his perfect image was shattered. With Lily in my arms, I walked out of the house that had become my prison. I didn't look back. I was finally free from Martin's shadow, ready to start anew. As I drove to my parents' house, I thought about the future. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to rebuild my life, for Lily and for myself. Martin and his parents would learn that I was not a woman to be underestimated. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and emotional upheaval. Despite Martin's attempts to intimidate me, I stood strong. The evidence of his affair was undeniable, and soon the divorce proceedings were in my favor. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a mix of relief and triumph. I had stood up to Martin and his oppressive family, and I had won. But my revenge didn't end there. Martin's affair had not only cost him his marriage, but also his reputation. His colleagues and friends learned of his indiscretions, and his once untouchable status crumbled. As for his parents, they were left to grapple with the reality of their son's actions. Their attempts to reach out to me were met with silence. They had lost a daughter-in-law who had once cared for them, all because of their blind support for Martin. I had emerged from this ordeal stronger and more resilient. I had fought for my dignity and won. And as I looked at Lily, playing happily in her grandmother's arms, I knew that I had made the right decision. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I had closed a painful chapter in my life, and a new one was just beginning. In the months following the divorce, my life underwent a transformation. The chains of a loveless marriage had been broken, and in their place, I found a newfound sense of freedom and self-worth. With Lily by my side, I started to rebuild our lives, piece by piece. One day, as Lily played in the garden of my parents' home, I received a phone call that marked the final chapter in my saga with Martin. It was Laura, her voice a mix of shock and concern. Evelyn, have you heard about Martin? No. What happened? I asked, a sense of foreboding settling over me. He's lost his job. After the divorce and the affair came to light, his company let him go. And it gets worse. He's been struggling financially. The alimony, the legal fees, it's all caught up with him. I paused, absorbing the news. A part of me felt a pang of vindication, but it was overshadowed by a sobering realization of the consequences of his actions. And his parents? I found myself asking. They're in a tough spot, too, Laura continued. Without Martin's support, they've had to downsize. It seems they're finally understanding the repercussions of their behavior. I ended the call with a heavy heart. Despite everything Martin had put me through, I found no joy in his downfall. It was a stark reminder of how one's actions could have far-reaching consequences. In the weeks that followed, I focused on Lily and our new life. We spent our days surrounded by the love and support of my parents, who had welcomed us with open arms. One afternoon, as I watched Lily play, my mother sat beside me. Evelyn, you've grown so much through all of this. You're strong, my dear, stronger than you ever realized. I smiled, squeezing her hand. Thanks, Mom. It's been a hard road, but I've learned a lot about myself. And Lily is thriving, she added, watching her granddaughter with a tender gaze. She's happy, and that's what matters most. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for my dignity, it had all led to this moment of peace and contentment. I knew there would be challenges ahead and questions from Lily about her father as she grew older. I would face them head-on, with honesty and strength. For now, I was content in the knowledge that I had stood up for myself and my daughter, and we had emerged stronger for it. I looked at Lily, her laughter ringing through the air, and I felt a surge of hope. Our future was unwritten, a blank canvas ready to be filled with new memories and experiences. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to seeing what each new day would bring.